The girl's dress hung in tatters when she stumbled onto Marcus Wade's porch, blood trickling from a split lip and dirt streaked across her cheek like war paint. She couldn't have been more than 17, with hair the color of autumn wheat and eyes that held too much knowing for someone so young. "Please," she whispered, clutching the torn fabric to her chest. They tried to. Her voice cracked and she swayed on her feet like a sapling in a storm. Marcus caught her before she fell, his weathered hands steady against her trembling shoulders. In 37 years of living hard in the Wyoming Territory, he'd seen plenty of broken things, horses, men, promises. But something about this girl's shattered dignity hit him different, like a punch to the gut that knocked the wind clean out of him. "Easy now," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "You're safe here." She looked up at him with those knowing eyes and he saw something flicker there. Hope, maybe, or just the desperate need to believe his words were true. They said no one would help me, that I was nothing but—" She couldn't finish, but Marcus heard the unsaid words hanging in the air like smoke. He'd built his ranch 15 miles outside Millbrook for a reason. People were messy, complicated, dangerous. Cattle were simpler. They didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't hurt each other for sport. But as he looked at this broken girl on his porch, something ancient and protective stirred in his chest, something he thought had died with his sister Sarah 20 years ago. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma Hartley." She straightened her spine, trying to find dignity in the ruins of her appearance. "My PA runs the general store in town. Or he did, before the fever took him last month." Marcus knew Hartley's store. Good man, fair prices, always had a kind word for everyone. Which meant this girl was alone now, vulnerable as a newborn calf in wolf country. "Who did this to you?" The question came out harder than he intended, and Emma flinched. But then she met his eyes, and he saw steel beneath the fear. "The banker's sons, all 3 of them." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They said I owed them payment for Pa's debts." Marcus felt something cold and dangerous settle in his bones. He knew those boys knew their father too, rich, entitled, used to taking whatever they wanted, and apparently they'd decided they wanted Emma Hartley over his dead body. Marcus led Emma inside, settling her at his kitchen table while he heated water and gathered clean rags. His hands shook as he worked, not from age or fear, but from the rage building in his chest like steam in a kettle. "You can't go back to town," he said, dabbing at the cut on her lip with gentle precision. "Not until this gets sorted." Emma's eyes widened. "I have nowhere else to go. The store, it's all I have left. The store can wait." Marcus set down the rag and looked at her directly. "Those boys, they'll come looking for you. And next time they might not stop at just tearing your dress." She flinched at his words but didn't argue. Smart girl, she knew the truth as well as he did. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. "You don't even know me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, memories of Sarah flickering through his mind like candlelight. His little sister, barely 16 when the soldiers came through. He'd been away buying cattle, thought she'd be safe in town for just one night. By the time he got back, "Let's just say I know what happens when good people do nothing," he said, finally. Emma nodded, understanding passing between them without words. "What do we do?" "You're going to stay here where it's safe. I'm going to town to have a conversation with the Bancroft boys." "No." Emma grabbed his wrist, her fingers surprisingly strong. "If you confront them directly, they'll just deny it. It's their word against mine, and everyone in town knows who has the money and power." She was right, and Marcus hated it. The Bancrofts owned half of Millbrook, the bank, the saloon, probably the sheriff too. 3 drifters could disappear easy enough, but a respected rancher starting trouble, that would bring questions, investigations, maybe even federal marshals. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked. Emma's eyes hardened and for a moment she looked older than her years. "We make them think I've disappeared. Let them believe they scared me off. Meanwhile I gather evidence, letters, records, anything that proves what they've been doing to other girls." "Other girls? You think I'm the first?" Emma's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "The baker's daughter left town sudden like 3 months ago. The preacher's niece too. Everyone said they went to live with relatives, but," she shrugged, the gesture heavy with implication. Marcus felt the rage in his chest grow hotter, a pattern of predation, hidden behind money and influence, the kind of evil that festered in the dark corners of civilized places. But just as he opened his mouth to respond, the sound of hoofbeats echoed across his property, multiple riders, moving fast and purposeful. Through the window he could see dust rising on the horizon like a brown storm cloud. They'd been found. Upstairs, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. Hide in the loft above my bedroom. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Emma didn't argue. She moved like a ghost up the wooden stairs, her bare feet silent on the boards. Marcus waited until he heard the loft door close, then checked his rifle and walked out onto the porch. 6 riders approached at a steady lope, their faces grim with purpose. Marcus recognized them all, the 3 Bancroft boys in front, flanked by their father's hired guns. Behind them rode Sheriff Coleman, his badge catching the afternoon sun like a mockery of justice. They pulled up 20 feet from the porch, horses snorting and stamping, dust settling around them like a curtain. Thomas Bancroft, the eldest son, sat his horse with the easy arrogance of a man who'd never faced real consequences. "Afternoon, Wade," Thomas called out, his voice friendly enough to fool someone who didn't know better. "We're looking for a girl, Emma Hartley. Heard she might have come this way." Marcus leaned against his porch rail, rifle cradled casual-like in his arms. "Haven't seen hide nor hair of any girl. What's she done?" "Stole money from the bank," James Bancroft chimed in, the middle son with mean eyes and a weak chin. "Took it right out of the till when nobody was looking." "That's a serious accusation," Marcus said mildly. "Strange though, last I heard the Hartley girl didn't work at the bank." The youngest Bancroft, Robert, shifted in his saddle. She had access through her father's accounts. Marcus studied the boy's face, saw the telltale flush of a poor liar caught in his web. "Hartley's been dead a month. Don't reckon his accounts are very active these days." Sheriff Coleman spat into the dust. "Look, Wade, we just need to ask her some questions." "No harm in that." "Course not." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Tell you what, if I see her, I'll be sure to let you know. In the meantime, might want to check the old mining camps up north. Heard there's been some drifters up that way." Thomas Bancroft's jaw tightened. "We'd like to search your property, just to be thorough." The words hung in the air like smoke, and Marcus felt the familiar weight of a moment balanced on a knife's edge. 6 armed men against 1, easy odds for them, impossible ones for him. But sometimes impossible was all a man had to work with. "You got a warrant, Sheriff?" Marcus asked quietly. Coleman's face reddened. "Don't need one if you got nothing to hide." "Funny thing about the law," Marcus said, straightening up from the rail. "Way I understand it, a man's property is his castle, and uninvited guests." He let the rifle shift just slightly in his hands. "We ain't generally welcome." The hired guns tensed, hands drifting toward their weapons, but Thomas held up a hand, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "We'll be going then," Thomas said finally. "But Wade, if you're harboring a criminal, that makes you an accessory. Hope you understand what that means." Marcus smiled again, and this time it was sharp as broken glass. "I understand plenty, boy. Question is, do you?" After the riders disappeared into the distance, Marcus found Emma sitting on his bed, tears streaming down her face. She'd heard everything, of course. Walls weren't thick enough to muffle the sound of her world crumbling. "They called me a thief," she whispered. "My father was the most honest man in this territory, and they called me a thief." Marcus sat down beside her, careful to keep space between them. "Your father was a good man, everyone knew it. That's exactly why they're trying to destroy his memory. Can't have folks thinking too highly of the Hartley name." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What am I going to do? I can't hide here forever, and I sure can't go back to town. We'll figure something out." Marcus reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small worn photograph, a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This was my sister Sarah. She was about your age when she died." Emma took the photograph with trembling fingers. "What happened to her?" "Same thing that almost happened to you. Men who thought they could take whatever they wanted." Marcus's voice was quiet, but Emma heard the pain underneath. I wasn't there to protect her, been carrying that guilt for 20 years. It wasn't your fault, Emma said softly. Maybe not, but I'll be damned if I let it happen again. Marcus looked at her directly. I'm going to help you, Emma, not just because it's right, but because Sarah would want me to. Emma handed back the photograph, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. She looks like she was a wonderful person. She was. Had dreams of opening a school, teaching children to read and write. Said education was the only thing that could really change the world. Marcus tucked the photograph away. Reckon she would have liked you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I have an idea, Emma said suddenly, about how to stop them. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The bank records, every transaction, every loan, every payment, it's all written down in ledgers. If we could get inside, find proof of what they've been doing. She looked at him with growing excitement. We could expose them all. Breaking into a bank is a hanging offense, Marcus pointed out. So is what they've been doing to girls like me. Emma's voice was steel wrapped in silk. The difference is, they've been getting away with it. Marcus studied her face in the dying light, seeing not just the frightened girl who'd stumbled onto his porch, but the woman she was becoming, strong, determined, dangerous in her own quiet way. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The bank stood dark and silent under the new moon, its windows like empty eyes staring out at the sleeping town. Marcus and Emma crouched in the alley beside it, hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant sound of piano music from the saloon. You sure about this? Marcus whispered. Emma nodded, her face set with grim determination. The window in the back, it's been broken for weeks. Pa always said old Bancroft was too cheap to fix it proper. They slipped through the shadows like ghosts, Emma leading the way with the sure-footed grace of someone who'd grown up in these streets. The broken window opened with barely a whisper, and they were inside. The bank felt different in the darkness, smaller somehow, and filled with the musty smell of old money and older secrets. Emma moved straight to the filing cabinets behind the main desk, her fingers finding the right drawer by memory. Here, she breathed, pulling out a thick ledger. This is it. By lamplight, they found it all, every crooked deal, every forged signature, every girl who'd been forced to pay her family's debts in ways that had nothing to do with money. Names, dates, amounts, all written in Thomas Bancroft's careful script. But more than that, they found something else. Correspondence with banks in Denver, St. Louis, even San Francisco. The Bancrofts weren't just running a local operation, they were part of something bigger, a network of corruption that stretched across the Western Territories. Sweet Jesus, Marcus muttered, this goes all the way to the territorial government. Emma was already copying names and figures onto loose paper, her handwriting quick but precise. We need to get this to the federal marshals. They're the only ones with authority over territorial officials. They worked in tense silence, gathering evidence that could bring down not just the Bancroft family, but dozens of their associates. It was dangerous knowledge, the kind that got people killed. That's when they heard the footsteps, heavy boots on wooden boards, moving with purpose toward the bank's front door. Marcus blew out the lamp and grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her toward the back window. But they were too late. The front door opened with a crash, and lamplight flooded the interior. Well, Thomas Bancroft's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Look what we got here. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Marcus and Emma frozen by the window, Thomas and his brothers blocking the front door, Sheriff Coleman stepping out of the shadows with his gun drawn. Then Emma did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She laughed. You know what's funny, she said, straightening up and facing them without fear. All this time I thought you were smart, thought you had some grand plan. She held up the copied papers. But you're just stupid, greedy men who kept records of every crime you ever committed. Thomas's face went white with rage. Give me those papers, or what? You'll kill me. Rate me. Do what you did to Sarah Wade 20 years ago. Emma's voice carried clearly in the still air. Go ahead. But these copies are already on their way to Denver. Federal Marshal Patterson is going to be very interested in your family's business practices. It was a bluff. A desperate, dangerous bluff. But it worked. Marcus saw the moment doubt crept into Thomas's eyes. The way his brothers shifted nervously behind him. You're lying, Thomas said. But his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Emma smiled, and it was sharp as a wolf's grin. Guess you'll find out when the marshals arrive. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but felt like a lifetime. Thomas lunged forward, reaching for the papers. Marcus stepped between them, his fist connecting with Thomas's jaw in a sound like breaking wood. The younger man dropped like a stone. Sheriff Coleman raised his gun, but Emma was already moving. She grabbed the lamp from the desk and hurled it at the wall, where it shattered in a burst of flame and broken glass. In the sudden chaos of fire and smoke, she and Marcus dove through the back window into the alley beyond. They ran through the night like demons were chasing them, which Marcus reflected grimly, wasn't far from the truth. But they had what they needed. More importantly, they had each other. 3 months later, the federal marshals had been thorough. By the time they finished their investigation, half the territorial government was in chains, and the Bancroft family name was synonymous with corruption from Colorado to California. Emma stood in the ruins of what had been her father's store, but she wasn't looking backward anymore. In her hands were the deeds to 3 buildings on Main Street, and a bank draft for more money than she'd ever imagined. Compensation from the federal government for her role in exposing one of the largest corruption scandals in territorial history. You could rebuild, Marcus said from the doorway. Make it bigger than before. Emma turned to him with a smile that held all the warmth of spring sunshine. I could. Or she paused, suddenly shy. I could invest in a cattle ranch outside town. Heard there's one looking for a partner. Marcus felt his heart skip like a stone on water. Partnership's a serious thing. Got to trust your partner completely. I do, Emma said simply. The question is, do you trust me? Instead of answering with words, Marcus crossed the room and took her hands in his. They were calloused now from 3 months of ranch work, strong and sure, like the woman who owned them. Years later, when folks in the new town of Millbrook told stories about the night that changed everything, they always ended the same way, with Emma and Marcus Wade standing together on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and promise. Some said it was justice that brought them together, others claimed it was fate, but Marcus knew better. It was choice, the choice to stand up when it mattered, to protect the innocent, to build something good from the ashes of something rotten, and in the end that made all the difference.